Anyone who has attended the Christmas pageant here in the last 2 years will surely remember the black sheep. Okay. Those poor shepherds had their work cut out for them. And it wasn't just the black sheep, but the whole herd of little fluffy creatures crawling down the aisle called out with loud baas announcing their arrival on the scene. Last year, the black sheep rolled down the aisle like a log, bumping into the pews and the feet of those sitting on the ends. The sheep had been doing log rolls in its occupational therapy session that week and was using this as an opportunity to practice. The year before, the black sheep magically transformed into a snake, slithering down the aisle on its belly. Who knew that a snake visited baby Jesus in the manger? And once it arrived in the front and saw the baby Jesus, it jumped up and started joyfully running circles all around the sanctuary. At the conclusion of the pageant, the black sheep hesitantly joined the entire cast here on the chancel to sing Joy to the World and found itself standing next to one of the microphones, which was still on. They gleefully grabbed the microphone, but they happened to be standing next to our wise senior minister who acted quickly. He calmly took the microphone from the black sheep's hands, powered it off, and then handed it back to the black sheep to continue with his ba-ba-ba'ing to the tune of Joy to the World. No panic, no scolding, just a gentle gesture that allowed the black sheep to continue with his harmless display of mischievous joy. For those of you who don't know him, the black sheep is my son, MD. And it was in that moment with the microphone that I knew, my family belongs here. Yes, even my expressive, silly, creative, neurodivergent, and sometimes unruly kids belong here and are loved. I know my wife and I are not the only parents who sometimes worry about our children misbehaving in church and wonder, will my family be welcome here? Can anybody relate to that? Yeah? Okay, good. But the resounding response to the question we ask ourselves is, yes, you are welcome here. I can't tell you how many people came up to me that day and occasionally in the months since, telling me that the black sheep was the highlight for them. And while we parents of young kids harbor a lot of anxiety about being judged for our kids' behavior, for the most part, people experienced MD as a joyful, energetic child who was exploring and learning and practicing belonging. He was doing what children do best, being a fully embodied human, pushing boundaries, and trying to make sense of the experience of the pageant and this gathering of people in the sanctuary watching him and smiling and taking pictures. Parents know that things like this will happen, and so we're taking a risk that our beloved children will be accepted and valued and loved in this community, whether they're sitting quietly, wiggling, dancing, coloring, or log rolling down the aisle. I don't know if MD will remember that specific experience at the pageant when he gets older, but I'm certain that he'll remember how it feels to be in a community that sees and loves him for who he is. One of the hopes for young people that grow up in our church community is that they will return to church as adults and it will feel like coming home. I don't remember everything I learned in church growing up, but I do remember what it felt like. It felt like home. It was a place where I could be with my family, but also a place where I could be with peers and with trusted adults outside my family. A place where I could be myself, where I could take risks and step out as a leader in ways that I didn't in other parts of my life. And when I return to that community, even today, I know I still belong there. They're my people. I hope that each of you here today, whatever your life age or life stage, However extroverted or introverted you are, wherever you are on your journey with this church or Unitarian Universalism, knows the experience of belonging and having found your people. I've heard so many stories from you about finding that here in church, about sitting in worship for the first time, or hearing the affirmation, or walking in the door at a crisis point in your life and seeing a friendly face and ending up in tears of relief, knowing that you had found your place. You found this community, a place where you are found in return and where you are welcomed and loved. It's this vision of the world that Valerie Kaur speaks about in the reading for today. She has this sort of mystical experience of dreaming of a future child, and then a few years later being faced with her 3-year-old son asking, "How you found me?" As if he'd known all along, before this life began, that this relationship was meant to be in some way. "This is the mommy I wanted," he says, putting his hand on her cheek. On this Mother's Day, I can't think of a better way to honor mothers of all kinds than to dream of and help make real a world where everyone is seen, found, and beloved. Valerie Kaur writes, "All I can do is hold on to the vision of the world longing to be, a world where every child feels found and every person is beloved, a world where we can look upon any face, even those we might fear, and find recognition, a world where we beckon each other to return to love. This work belongs to all of us," she says, "not just mothers. We all have the ability to participate in this great love story." I know many mothers and all kinds of parents whose hearts have been breaking this week, hearing their beloved children say that they don't feel safe at school or at the mall or walking down their own street. This is a hard world in which to raise kids, and it's a hard world in which to be a kid. The poet Jane Hirshfield wrote, "I know that hope is the hardest love we carry. We need more spaces in which we can feel safe, more communities that help us to carry this love expressed as hope." We honor our mothers and we honor the roots of this day when we dream of and help make this a reality for all. The origins of Mother's Day go back to a Unitarian in 1870 named Julia Ward Howe. Howe lost her own mother at age 5. And when she became a mother herself and she saw women like her losing their sons to the violence of war in the United States and around the world, she sought to mobilize mothers for peace. Her Mother's Day proclamation began, "Arise then, women of this day. Arise, all women who have hearts." Long before Hallmark, Mother's Day was a day in which mothers banded together for peace. Today's efforts by mothers to advocate for gun reform are descended in part from Julia Ward Howe and other foremothers like her. The vision, values, and theology of Unitarian Universalism are so important in our world today. We affirm the inherent worth and dignity of every person. We affirm that people of all ages have gifts to offer our community and our world. We acknowledge that we're interconnected, and therefore our well-being is tied up not just in what I do, but in what we do together. We commit ourselves to building beloved community in which all are safe, seen, found, and beloved. We believe that people are born good, which we celebrated in the ritual of child dedication today as we blessed and committed to being part of the spiritual growth and unfolding goodness of the young people in our midst. For me, the greatest experiences of belonging have almost always been in communities that are intentionally multi-generational. This was the case when I was a child and a youth, and it's also been the case for me as an adult. How many of you have ever been seated at a kid's table? A lot of you. Okay, how many of you liked sitting at the kids' table? Not as many of you, okay. I understand the appeal for both kids and adults. Adults are free to carry on adult conversations without constant interruptions, and kids are free to eat and run. I remember what it felt like to sit at the kids' table. And for me, I always yearned to be with the grown-ups all together. Today, when I'm in charge of the seating chart, I intentionally mix the ages. It does require that both kids and adults give up some of the freedoms that they enjoy at their segregated tables, but it can result in such meaningful interactions and relationship building across generations. When I went away to a small liberal arts college as a young adult, it felt in some ways like I was going back to the kids' table. I yearned to be not just around my peers, but to be part of a community of all ages, with children running around and opportunities to get to know people my parents' and grandparents' age. This is what kept me connected to Unitarian Universalist congregations through years when many young people don't prioritize going to church. Church was the only place I could find this. It was my anchor. Unitarian Universalist leader Connie Goodbread is known to say, "Faith development is all we do. Unitarian Universalism is all we teach, and the congregation is the curriculum." Now, if this is the case, then how we share space, how we interact with people of all ages, and the ways that we see and welcome each other are all expressions of Unitarian Universalism, and all contribute to our faith development, our understanding of this world, this faith, and this church community that we are a part of. When we embrace the silly and the serious among us, when we strive to make church accessible to people of all ages and backgrounds and abilities, when we show up for each other in times of need, when we stand in solidarity with friends and strangers alike, and when we seek to understand a variety of viewpoints and perspectives on truth and life, we are learning and practicing and coming to understand more deeply what it means to be a Unitarian Universalist. The last part of Valerie Kaur's mystical dream experience described in our reading is when she's face to face with the young boy in the dream, and he sees that she is afraid. She doesn't say why exactly she is afraid. Maybe it's the intense love that envelops her and the boy when they embrace, a love that coexists with a deep fear about what it means to raise a son in this world. The little boy in front of her transforms into a 40-year-old man and smiles at her. She looks into his aged face and feels a surge of that intense love once again. "He was showing me that it would be okay," she writes, and then he returned to his child self. When she woke up from the dream, all she could think about was wanting to return to the little boy. And 7 years later, they found each other when her son Kavi was born. And when he was just 3 years old, he too realized that he had been found and was part of the family that he always wanted. Imagine the stories we will tell, the institutions we will build, and the lives we will lead when we affirm that every person is a person, she writes. Young or old, transgender, queer or cisgender, financially comfortable or financially struggling, able-bodied or not, partnered or single, with children or without children, every person is a person. Not the future, not a not yet, but a person here and now, worthy of being seen and found, worthy of being called beloved. This is what we're working towards as a church community, as Unitarian Universalists. So let this Mother's Day today be a reminder to us all that we are part of making this dream a reality, with every word we speak and with every action we take. May it be so, and amen.